Hey guys, welcome back to Snake Limited. I'm John, and today I wanted to talk about the business of ball pythons. This year has sort of been, I guess, crazy to an extent in terms of what has happened with ball pythons, the ball python industry in general, probably all reptiles, all reptile breeding. Over the last 2 years, 2020, 2021, and I guess even a little bit of 2022, it was easy to sell snakes, and it was easy to sell ball pythons, and you were selling them at a premium, even the lower end stuff. Now, as we're in 2023, the market has definitely flatlined. It's definitely crashed. People may still be selling snakes, but they are not selling for what they were selling for the last 2.5 years. For example, I have a yellow belly lemon blast pied het desert ghost male that I paid $4,000 for last year. This is only 12 months ago I bought this snake. I'm having a hard time getting rid of him for around $1,000. That's a 75% drop in price in an adult breeder male that I can't get rid of. I have a DG, a super inchy butter DG female who's 1,300 grams that I paid $3,000 for last year, and I'm having issues moving her at that same price at breeding size this year. There are other snakes that I had to sell at half price from what I paid for them a year or two ago because prices are just down everywhere. So that's bad if you're trying to sell things, or if you purchase something at a very high price a year or two ago, expecting to breed it, and then you go to breed it and the babies are now worth half as much money as they were 2 years ago. But it also works out for you as well, because I have gotten some very sweet deals on snakes over the past 2 months. Desert Ghost Clown females are listed by most people at $10,000 to $12,000 on Morph Market, and I've paid half that for them. So there's two sides to the story there. Yes, the things you're selling are going to be worth a lot less money, but the things you're buying are worth a lot less money too. So there's two sides to that story. A little bit of history of kind of how I got into this business. I've been doing this for about 5 years now. I decided to start doing it in 2019, so I was in before all that, the COVID rush. I saw the value in this before COVID happened, and I'm still in it now. I am all in this. I have invested hundreds of thousands of dollars into my collection, into my equipment, into my battery backup systems, into my generators, everything. I'm all in this business, and there's value in it. But you have to know what you're doing. You have to know where to invest. And you need to make smart decisions. Because even I started out making some bad decisions and having to reboot that, having to change what I was investing in. It cost me probably a year or two in terms of where it would be if I would have started off in the right place. So I started off breeding, and she's in sheds, so obviously it's kind of stink. I started off breeding blue-eyed Lucies. That's kind of what kind of drew me into ball python breeding. I bought a pastel male, just a plain pastel male. I fell in love with ball pythons, and then I found out what a blue-eyed Lucy was, and I went crazy for blue-eyed Lucies, and those were the first snakes I was selling. The first clutch I produced was blue-eyed Lucies, and when I produced a couple snakes and sold them right away for $500, a couple years back, I was ecstatic, right? So I was like, well, this is a thing. I bred these snakes, I produced eggs, I was able to hatch the eggs, and I was able to sell the babies. Now I'm going to start growing it. I can do more. So that's where you guys should start. You need to figure out can you breed them? Can you raise them? Can you breed them? Can you hatch them? And can you sell them? And those are kind of the 4 parts to this business. You also have to grow your business and market your business, but just from terms of actually raising and breeding and caring for the snakes. At that point, I decided I can do this. I can go all in. I can do more. That's where I made my big mistake. I bought more things like Blue-Eyed Lucy's. I wasn't buying higher end stuff like Clown combos, Pied combos, Desert Ghost combos, Ultra Milk combos. I was buying super inchy pinstripes. I was buying, I don't know, Fire, Yellow Belly, Mojaves, just random co-dominant, incomplete dominant gene snakes. I think the following year, after I started purchasing all these snakes, out of like 18 clutches, I produced one clutch that had any visual, or no, two clutches that had any visual snakes in it. And it wasn't even a visual pied to visual pied or visual clown to clown. It was like a clown to het clown and a pied to a het pied. So even only half the clutches were pied or clown. That year, which I think was 2021, that I ended up, 2020 I ended up buying all those snakes and investing a bunch of money in them. 2021 is when I produced like around 100 hatchlings. And I maybe, from sales of those snakes, brought in like $40,000 to $45,000. That's when I realized, okay, look, I can make money doing this, but you have to be selling those snakes really fast to make it worth your while. Or else I have 100 hatchlings sitting in a rack and I'm feeding them weekly. And if I have 100 hatchlings sitting in a rack, if they're hatchlings, that's $100 in food that you are spending every week on them. Those babies are going to cost you $400 or $500 to feed every single month. And you have to sell 2 or 3 of those snakes every month just to cover the costs of you feeding them. And right now, with 35,000 plus ball pythons in morph market, and I'm sure your local shows are probably flooded with snakes too, it's not necessarily easy to sell those snakes unless you're selling them at a deeply discounted price, which is what I've had to do this year. I've had snakes that I've produced that are worth, in my opinion, and what the market says, more than what I've sold them for, but some of those snakes aren't selling. So you have to cut prices if you want to sell them now versus holding on to them for an extended period of time. I've mentioned this on Instagram recently. It's that, like, if you're in this as a business, you're in this to sell snakes. You're not in this to hold on to snakes indefinitely until you feel like somebody meets the price in which you value it. The buyers determine what the market is right now. It's a buyer's market. So these snakes, they sell for what somebody feels like paying for it. And right now, it's kind of on the downside of that. So when I saw that I was producing 100 hatchlings and, you know, my collection was probably going to start growing at that point, and, you know, the following year maybe I was producing 150 or maybe 200, and I was realizing the costs involved with that. I was like, hold on a second. I took a look at like what some of the bigger breeders were doing. Mainly Aussie. That's kind of where I drew my inspiration from how I wanted to grow my business. I saw a video, you know, of him breeding still out of his house, out of his basement. He didn't have a huge facility. He wasn't producing thousands of snakes every year. I was like, if I can make 100 expensive babies, investment quality babies, or 100 pet quality babies, they take up the same amount of space, they cost the same to feed, they cost the same to ship. Why would I not do that? Why would I only have pet quality things when I can produce a bunch of investment quality things, and at the very worst I produce pet quality stuff as kind of like the worst luck scenarios with those clutches? That's what I started doing. I sold literally probably 80% of the females I had that were all just co-dominant genes, and I started investing heavily in pied. I preferred pied. That's where I wanted to go. So I got lightning pieds, got ultramal pieds, I got just crazy super orange dream pied combos, and that's the direction I went. The following year, 2022, I actually only produced 4 clutches. and one of those was a lightning pied to a lightning pied clutch. It produced, I think, 6 babies, and I ended up actually selling them all, which was a mistake. But I spent so much money on snakes that I didn't have a choice but to sell all those babies to recoup some of that money. I think I made between $25,000 and $30,000 just off of that one clutch because I decided to start producing higher end things. The other 3 clutches maybe produced maybe 10 grand worth of snakes. I think I ended up producing just maybe or bringing in just under $40,000 that year. So from 21 to 22, 21 I produced 100 snakes. 22 I think I produced maybe around 20 snakes, and I made roughly the same amount of money. It was 20% as much work, 20% as much rack space, 20% as much food to feed those snakes, a lot less work. So that kind of just reconfirmed, what my thoughts were, is that you can do this. You can produce less if you just buy some nicer genetics, some nicer snakes, and you don't have to waste all of your money feeding a bunch of mouths that you're really not going to get your investment back in. So ball pythons as a business, it's tricky because you kind of need to start off pretty basic. I would not tell you to go buy a normal and breed it to a pastel, and that's where you should start. But with the prices of clowns and pieds right now, maybe buy a clown, maybe buy a pied, and maybe breed them together and make some double hets, and maybe you buy a clown with some genes in it and a pied with some extra genes in it. You breed those together, and you make a double het clown pied clutch that has a few extra genes in there. Maybe it's OD, maybe it's leopard, maybe it's spot nose, maybe it's yellow belly. You have all those like really important co-dominant genes in there, and you make some double hets, and then in a couple years you have a nice foundation for a clown pied project. Once you're able to breed those snakes, once you're able to raise up those babies, once you're able to sell those babies, once you're able to start marketing your business, then you have your proof of concept really. You understand the process a little bit anyways, then you start investing. Don't just jump into it and just start buying everything that you can find at a reptile show or on Morph Market. You need to have focus. You need to figure out what you're doing. Usually I say take the first year, figure out if you can do it, figure out if you want to do it, because it's a lot of work. You are probably going to start needing breeding rodents at some point. So are you going to buy a ARS or Freedom Breeder rack, or are you going to build a DIY rack? Do you have the space for it? Do you want to deal with the smell of it? Do you want to take care of 30, 40, 50, 60, 100 snakes at a time? Are you able to deal with quarantine space? Do you want to invest in an incubator? Or do you have to make your own incubator? There's a lot of things that factor into it. And that's why you need to do research before just jumping in. That's why you see so many snakes right now and so many people struggling to sell them, to move them. Selling them for $50, $100, when realistically you're losing money selling them at that point. And that's kind of even an issue that I've been running into this year. Is I've only had 4 clutches, I think, hatch at this point, so most of my stuff's going to hatch over the summer. But the prices on those snakes are lower than I would like. I had Pastel Mojave Pied MJ Xanthics hatch in December, and I just sold them all off in the last month or two because I had to drop the price because nobody else had them on the market. They were unique snakes, but I valued them at what I thought they were, or should have been valued at, but they weren't going. Once I dropped the price down, once I cut the price in half, basically, people were more, more readily willing to invest in them, to pay the extra sticker price. So, ball pythons as a business. You need to listen to people that have been doing this. You need to take advice from people. You need to invest in a Patreon of one of the bigger breeders or people that have more experience. I've actually thought about starting a Patreon that is more focused on the business aspect of things. to kind of help people out that are just starting off. Because I don't think there's enough people, honestly, that have been doing this long enough that should be giving advice. Obviously Billy has a Patreon, which is fantastic. I'm actually a member of it. Justin has a Patreon. Ozzy has a Patreon. There are quite a few big breeders that have Patreons, and they're probably worth the money. I don't know if Justin's or Ozzy's are. I've stayed in Billy's because I see the value in it, and it helps me every time we have contact, even just to have as a mentor or somebody that I can talk to when I have a question I don't know the answer to. It's fantastic. But I understand the business side of things already. And that's where my expertise comes in. I'm an entrepreneur. I have another business that I run on my own. I'm all in the ball python stuff. I understand the financials of it. I understand the money of it. I understand the cash flow of it. And so that's why I think I'm really going to start a Patreon at some point once I decide to get it up and running, is because that's where my expertise is, and that's where I think I can give value to people that want to get into this as a business. So you should really be taking advice from people that know what they're doing, that have success, that have been able to sell at a consistent pace, that have been able to sell through adversity, sell in a down market, that have been doing this for years. And don't just take advice from some guy who's floundering, who's still selling pastels, 10 years into doing this. That's not a good business model. You're never going to make money doing that. You need to keep building your collection with stronger genetics, with stronger animals. And I know previously a lot of people have said, well, if you just produce high-end investment breeder quality stuff, then I can't be your customer. Well, that's not true. But that's also the point in what I'm doing. I don't want to sell to the pet market. As most breeders have said, and anybody that's been doing this for years has said, selling to the pet-only market is hard work. Because when I have a breeder buy a snake from me, they buy the snake, and then I don't talk to them again until they need a second snake. Because they know what they're doing with the ball python. They don't have a million questions. They don't want to know the snake's name. They don't want to know the parents' names. They don't want videos of the most recent fecal deposit. They don't want any of that. They just want to buy the snake because of the genetics, and they leave. Pet people require a lot more time, and that's fine. I understand the questions they have because they haven't been in this realm before, but that makes a lot more work for you as a business owner. So when I'm making investment quality snakes, there's still a possibility that I'm producing, if I'm producing let's say my most recent clutch, it's an OD Leopard Firefly Ultramel het pied to a pied. Well, I produced a couple double het snakes in that clutch, and one of them was just a fire double het Ultramel pied. It's really not worth anything. It's maybe worth $100. I'm actually packaging it with one of the pied females, and that's where the pet quality stuff comes in, because I'm going to produce $2,000 snakes in that clutch, but I'm also going to produce $100 snakes in that clutch. You don't want to be producing all $100 snakes. It's a terrible business model. You will be losing money every single year. You need to be producing things that are $2,000. Half your clutch is $2,000, half your clutch is $500 or $100. You can't be producing everything that's $100. So this is a business. People have been doing this for decades. It works, but you need to do it right. And, there's a flood of people in this market because of COVID, because of people being at home, having some extra cash laying around, not knowing what to do with it. Going on YouTube a lot and seeing a bunch of people making some cool snakes. That doesn't mean they were doing it right. And that's why you see the prices drop right now. That's why you see a lot of people that are dismayed, distraught, sad because they lost or are losing money and they're getting out. So you need to make the right decisions. You need to have kind of a mentor if you're just getting into this, and you need to do a lot of research before sinking a bunch of money into ball pythons. But it's definitely a viable business. You just have to do it right.